Ja, welcome to the Haus der Kulturen der Welt. Welcome to Lunch Bytes. I especially welcome all the artists, the thinkers involved in this wonderful European project. I welcome my friends from the Goethe Institute here. And I would like to start with thanks especially to the Goethe Institute that this project is possible here at the Haus der Kulturen der Welt. It's the second big project within a few weeks. Also the Faruqi project you can see in the exhibition hall was done in a close cooperation and on the basis of research-based project by the Goethe Institute. So we have a lot of reasons to thank the Goethe Institute for all the presence we have here at the house. And I especially would like also to name Barbara Honrad. She is the director of the Goethe Institute in Amsterdam, together with Melanie Bühler, the curator of the whole project, that they approached us and asked for having this kind of roundup at the Haus der Kulturen der Welt. I think it was a great idea, and we directly said we should do that because it fits in many ways directly to the conceptual approach of the Haus der Kulturen der Welt, which I'm going to explain in a few minutes. But I especially would like to thank also Johannes Ebert, the Generalsekretär, Secretary General of the Goethe Institute, who is with us tonight, that he supported the project, but especially also this presentation at the Haus der Kulturen der Welt. When we think about the relationship, I mean the HKW, the Haus der Kulturen der Welt, about the relationship between the arts and the digital world, I think the best way to do that is to illustrate that with an example. In summer 2011, there was a boat crossing the Mediterranean with about 71 people trying to escape from Libya to Europe. And in the middle of the Mediterranean, they lost the petrol and the boat started drifting within the Mediterranean. And the boat was drifting about 21 days, and the boat was at the same time constantly sending signals and asking for help, and nothing happened. At the end, the boat arrived at the shores of Libya with about 60 people dead and 11 people still alive. It's called the Left to Die boat and started to have a real history. Because this was a very special situation in the Mediterranean, it was at that time more or less the best observed area within the world because of the Libya war. There were a lot of army ships in the Mediterranean. There were a lot of planes in the air observing the whole Mediterranean, and nobody really took care of the boat. And when then took for court, and they all said we didn't get the signal. And this was a situation where a group from London, forensic architecture, started to intervene. And what they did, and this was a basis of one case we presented here in the exhibition Forensic Architecture, was to reconstruct the whole situation. They used, on the one side, all the photography which were done from satellites on the Mediterranean. They could really define where the ships at the time the boat was drifting in the Mediterranean were and how close they were to this boat. At the same time, they developed a simulation for the shifts of the currents in the Mediterranean. So they could really construct on each day, almost each hour, where the boat was, and in relationship to the other boats in the Mediterranean. And in that way, they reconstructed the case for the courts. What this example shows, and this was one example of about 26 cases we showed here 1.5 years ago at the house, is the role of the digital on the one side and the role of artists and collectives on the other side. The role of the digital is very clear, that on the one side we have so many satellites constantly mapping the whole Earth based on digital technologies. The digital world is the basis of all communication more or less going on at the moment around the world. So it's not anymore a special section of society, but it's underlying, so to say, most social processes. And you cannot understand our world, our societies anymore without taking the digital into account. And of course, it gets, on the one side, then the basis also for destruction. It gets the basis for armed warfare. All the drones are basically guided by digital technologies. But also artists start more and more to adapt these kind of technologies to build a kind of counterculture to what is happening in these big infrastructures. And the case I just explained was basically done by a collective of artists, scientists, who used aesthetic strategies, scientific strategies to reconstruct the case and make it a case in front of courts, and brought it even to the European Union. So you can see what this means for the work of the Haus der Kulturen der Welt. It's basically how we conceive the arts in our work, not only related to the digital world, but in general. We are not anymore interested in representing object-based representation here at the House. What is interesting for us is using aesthetic and scientific strategies to bring up cases which are relevant for social political discourse. And yeah, this is basically our conceptual approach, which we share, I think, with a lot of practices of artists which are in the room tonight. And I'm, again, very glad that you are here. Most welcome, and I give the words to Johannes Ebert, the head of the Goethe Institute.